Hello, everybody. Andy Jacob here with the .com magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series, and I have a great show today. You know, you watch the show all the time. Welcome back to the show. And of course, we talk about business. We talk about a lot of things on the show that really resonate for our viewers. And everybody always reaches out to me and they say, hey, Andy, what about book writing? Is it a good idea to write a book? Should I have a book for my business? What about writing fiction or nonfiction books? And we get so many questions about authorship and writing books. We wanted to invite an author on the show today. His name is Mr. Andy Mitchell, and he is the author of two books. One is called Destiny, and the other one is called The Ghost. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, but we're going to get into book publishing with Andy, talk about what it takes to write a book and what kind of passion is necessary to get from point A to B in the publishing effort. And we're very excited to have Andy on the show. So whether you're a business owner, a CEO, a founder, a startup founder, or someone just interested in business or authorship, Andy's going to bring some great insight into the book publishing world and, of course, some of his background and experience that led him to wanting to write these books. So Andy, welcome to the .com magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. We have Mr. Andy Mitchell. My name is Andy, so let's not get confused. As I get older, I get a little confused about my own name. So you've got these two great books. We're going to put the book covers up on the screen as we talk, Andy. One is called Destiny and one is called The Ghost. But before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you thinking about writing these books.
Well, I had been told in the past that I would be good at writing. And so I finally got an opportunity to try it. And it's been good. It's something I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love it very much. You like to write. You've got a lot in that mind of yours going around. And for people that are thinking about writing a book, you have all these thoughts in your mind. You have all these different concepts. You have all these different ideas. If you're going to write a nonfiction book or a book about business, let's say for the .com magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series specifically, you start putting together all of these ideas of how you want to teach people to go from point A to B. But when you write fiction, it's a little bit different. Did you have these stories in your mind, or how did you get started with the two books, Destiny and The Ghost?
Well, Destiny was the first book, and it started with a small idea, which was in the book, but not really related to the book. The idea was that somebody would think they're doing something, and somebody else actually did it. And so that's a small thing, and then it kind of grew from there. I didn't intentionally try to think about it; it just happened. And then, you forget about it and you go on. Then I heard a song with the word destiny in it, and I thought that's a good thing. And that combined with the original idea led to the plot. And it just took a little time and some imagination. And that's probably one of the funnest parts of writing a book, most fun part. Just coming up with the original ideas.
Yeah, I love it. So you come up with the original ideas and you kind of have to lay it out. Maybe you work with some people or some experts to sort of go through the process of how you put a book together. And if you put a fictional book together, it's almost the same as putting a nonfiction book together, because you need to think overall what the concept is. You need to think about the parts of the book. You need to think about the segmentation of the book. And then you need to think about sort of the characters in the book and what each character is doing and how they evolve throughout the book. And when you write a book, Andy, because I know when you write a nonfiction book, you sort of start with the end in mind. You want to get these people from point A to B, and then when they get to point B, they learn something. When you write a fictional book, Andy, do you start with the end in mind? In other words, do you know the outcome of the book and then you sort of go into that outcome, or do you develop the book and then end up with the outcome?
Well, writers are probably different. The way I do it is I have an ending in mind and a few mileposts in between in mind. Um, but it just kind of develops, and it may not develop the way you originally thought it would, but it it just comes to pass. You keep working on it and working on it, and then you have something that you're proud of.
Yeah, I love that. Now, do you recommend for people that are interested in writing a book, whether it's a fiction or a nonfiction book, to work with someone to develop the book? Or when do you bring somebody in to help you get it to the publishing, get it up on Amazon, get it out there so that people can start buying the book and enjoying your writing? When does that process take place?
Well, for me, it was the first thing I did is I looked at some online material on how to write, read some books on how to write, and then I just write it. I didn't really want too many people interfering with the creative process. And then, of course, my first draft of the first book was terrible. So I tried again. And then that's when you bring some people in right there. For me, that was made the most sense. And they would help me out. And then, part of it is developing your own craft, your own skills. And you can't rely on other people for that. So, I just kept at it. And it was work and not always fun, not always enjoyable, but ultimately it worked out. And I'm glad that I went through the process.
Yeah, it's all about the process. We talk about that a lot on the show, Andy, as you know from watching the show. We talk about the process in business, and we always talk about continuing on and not stopping and keep on pushing through those tough times. And I would imagine when you're writing a book, like you said, the first draft was probably not that good. I
No.
have some first drafts of mine that are terrible, but you
Yeah.
keep working on them and you ultimately get to where you want to get to. When you talk about it and you think about it, I bet you probably brought some of your background and experience into book writing. In other words, you did the first draft, you knew it wasn't that good, you fell on your face a little bit, but then you said to yourself, hey, I've got to keep on going. I've got something here. And if I just sort of take this sand and polish it into a beautiful diamond, maybe with some help of some other experts, I'll have a very nice, beautiful, decolored diamond here at the end of it. When you were writing, Andy, were there times when you said to yourself, I'm just going to quit. I'm done. I can't do this?
No, I didn't ever get to that point. I just, at times feel a little pressure to improve. So that was really what kicked it up another notch in my mind as far as my writing. And I never gave up. You just keep trying.
Yeah, I love that. Keep on trying. We hear that all the time on the show, whether you're a writer or an entrepreneur, a CEO, a founder. I mean, we've interviewed people that are running NASDAQ companies all the way to small to mid-sized business owners. And everybody says the same thing, that you just have to keep on pushing through it. And you have two books now. I know you're thinking about a third and a fourth. Is it easier once you have one in the pocket? In other words, once you wrote the first book, which I think was Destiny the first book, Andy?
Yes.
Yeah. Once you wrote the first book and got it published and got it out, was it easier to write the second book once you kind of stumbled and got through the first book?
Well, actually, in this case, I wrote both of these books at about the same time. Destiny first, and then The Ghost, which is a thriller. And so my third book is the situation where I benefited most from writing these two. And it's not finished yet, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, I see what you say. So you wrote Destiny and The Ghost together. You're taking the experience from writing two books at a time. I mean, I have to believe that's a tough task, because if I was writing two books at a time, I'd say to myself, oh, which book am I writing? Which one of the stories am I on? Which one of the characters is in each one of the books? So how
Yeah.
did you do it? Do you write it on a computer? Do you use an old-fashioned typewriter? How do you work through it?
I use a PC, and actually, I wrote Destiny first, and then immediately went on to write The Ghost. But I hadn't looked at Destiny very hard until I was finished with The Ghost. But sometimes I go out on the deck, which is right in front of me here, and just think about things. What would be good to happen in the next in the story, and usually it comes to me, or something like that, or I made a mistake, and how do I fix it, and things like that. But it's you want to work on a PC or write out some ideas longhand in some cases.
Yeah, it makes sense, Andy. Of course, not everyone can be a creative talent. Not everyone has these interesting stories coming through their head and able to get it out through their fingers onto a PC. But when I think about writing a book, I would imagine there's a lot of editing, a lot of looking at the words to make sure the wording is correct, the punctuation is correct, the chapter indentation is correct, the way in which it's presented on paper is correct. Do you recommend bringing some talent or some people or an organization or a business in to help you sort of get it edited, ready to go up on Amazon, ready to get sold?
In a way, I think in the editing process, you want ideas as far as, okay, here's where you went wrong. Here's where you need to add or subtract text. And so, but I still want to do it myself. Someone could say, this isn't right. I want to fix it. I want to be the one to learn from it. So, and then their proofreading is a little tedious at times, but important, of course. And then what I'll do is I'll go through the books and say it's finished, and I think it's pretty good. And I'll look at maybe the first sentence in each chapter and the last sentence. And then I'll say, do I have enough historical detail in here? Because these both take place in the 1880s to 1900s. And I'll look at other things like, is it interesting enough, or is there the right slang for the time as far as I know it? Things like that.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Andy, because when you write a fiction book and it takes place today, you can reference some of the events that are happening today. You can reference some of the technology that's happening today to make it very, very real life. If you write about the future, you're making everything up because you don't know what's happening in the future. But when you're writing from the past, in the late 1800s, let's say, in these particular cases, you have to make sure that you don't mention something in the book that wasn't even invented, let's say, in 1900. So how do you go about making sure it's historically correct?
Well, as far as that, I use Google a lot, and I'll put in, when did the phrase whatever become common? And if it says 1920, I can't use it.
Wow, even in the phraseology. So if you have two characters in the book and they're talking to each other, you want to make sure that the way they talk is the same way they used to talk prior to the 1900s, right?
Right. As much as I can. There's some reference material on you can find online as far as slang words used in the 1800s and that kind of thing. But I wasn't there, obviously, so I just have to do the best I can as far as based on what I know, the people might have talked like, the words they might have used. Some words have gone out of date since then, obviously, and some words just hadn't come to pass yet in phrases.
Yeah, it's very interesting, Andy. It really is. And one thing that great authors always talk about, as you know, from being an author of two books, about to have a third book come out, and talking to other authors through online chat rooms and through webinars and seminars that you're involved with, is they like to get an emotion across to the reader. In other words, if you write a fictional book, even a nonfiction book, there is some emotion as well. From the destiny and the ghost experience, what type of emotion are you trying to get across or elicit from the reader?
Well, in the case of Destiny, it's a love story with adventure mixed in. So obviously you want some emotion there. And I've heard all good things. I haven't heard my peak emotion, which I can't tell you, but I probably will. And The Ghost is a different type of book completely. There are 6 characters from Destiny that move on to Ghost, but it's at times actually kind of dark psychological thriller mixed in with a coming of age story. So in that case, I just want people to enjoy it. They, in the case of the Ghost, they maybe if they like thrillers and they were thrilled, that's success. That's all I can do.
Yeah, I love it. And you say that you brought 6 characters from Destiny to the Ghost. Now, that seems difficult to me, especially if someone just picks up the Ghost and they haven't read Destiny prior. So, how do you introduce these 6 characters in Ghost if somebody did not read Destiny?
Well, there's a few paragraphs of background provided. You don't have to read Destiny first, and but it would help a little bit understand it. But basically, I'm just looking at the characters and how they grow, how they develop, and so it's easy to keep them separate because they're almost different people, even though they had a past in
Yeah.
Destiny.
Yeah, it makes sense. And of course, one thing that's really unique and interesting, and of course, this interview that we're doing will be up online uh, for everyone to see. And I would imagine, a lot of people say to me, "Hey, Andy, thank you so much for bringing me on. We got to talk about my NASDAQ company. We got to talk about my book. We got to talk about my startup or my small to mid-sized business." But one thing they always say to me is, "I'm really happy this is going to stay up so that my kids and grandkids can see the video as well." When you write a book, are you thinking about that at all? That your name will be out there on these books for, future generations to say, "Hey, my grandpa, my great grandfather, my great 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 grandfather, many years from now, Andy Mitchell wrote these books, and this gives me a little bit of a understanding of the way he thought and the way he had a unique look at fictional writing."
Uh, Actually, I don't think of it that way very much. I think most, but it's there, but it's kind of in the back somewhere. But most authors think about their readers when they're writing, because that's why they're writing. If I'm writing for myself, I just write something and put it on the shelf, and that's the end of it. But you write for people to read and enjoy it. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking about all the time as I'm writing.
Yeah, I like that very much. I know you're in the middle of the third book. Your fingers are going to be typing probably a few minutes after the interview. Before I let you go, though, I want to talk a little bit about entrepreneurship and give back to some of the younger entrepreneurs watching the show. Andy, they're running a business. Maybe they're freezing in the frame. They're having a tough time. Maybe they want to give up. They don't know what to do. Maybe they want to make a pivot. Based on your background and experience, not only writing the books, but prior throughout your career, can you give some advice to the younger entrepreneurs, almost talking to like a young Andy Mitchell, if you were 20 years old, about how to keep on pushing when times get tough in business?
Well, first of all, you need to have some confidence in what you're doing based on kind of a model, business plan, something like that. It has to be realistic, something you can do. And then get help when you need it. In my case, if I had a rental property, I would need an electrician or a plumber sometimes. And just to make sure, too, that you're fit for that business. A lot of people don't like to be landlords because they get called out at 9 o'clock at night on a Sunday night or something. And that either bothers you or it doesn't. And in my case, it bothered me, but it was something I did. And so if you have a business, make sure that you enjoy doing it. And it's going to be work, it's going to be hard. But, if it's something that fits you, that's great. And you just keep going, you know,
Keep on
that's pretty
going,
much
right, Andy? I love it.
right.
I love it very much. Of course, you are a true and classic entrepreneur. Authors are entrepreneurs. Oftentimes we think of entrepreneurs as business people, and they are, but authors are the truest form of entrepreneur because you put something down in writing, you believe in it, you have to elicit an emotion from the reader. You want people to take an action. You have to take your books and get them marketed. You need to sell them. You need to keep on going. So in terms of the entrepreneurial spirit, I always find authors have a lot of what we're looking for in entrepreneurship in the business world as well. And of course, you're working on your third book. We're going to put some links below the interview. We'll put some links below with regard to publishing as well. Andy, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show and explaining, not only the process, but what it takes to keep on pushing. I mean, you did something very unique. You wrote 2 fictional books at the same time. Don't know how you did that, but you've got number 3 coming out. Of course, some of your characters, 6 of the characters from Destiny, you moved into the Ghost. And of course, you give some background in the Ghost. So for the readers or the people watching the show, if you buy the Ghost, you don't need to necessarily read Destiny, but if you'd like to buy them both, I'm sure there's a package deal available. And I want to thank you, Andy, so much for coming on the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today.
Well, thank you. It was my honor.
Thanks.